On the schedule, we were supposed to have the Minister of the Ministry of the Natural Resources and Environment of Thailand, but he's on duty, so he cannot be here today. Instead, we would like to welcome Dr. Kampanat Phakdikul, the Dean of the Faculty of the Natural Resource Studies at Mahidol University, to give a welcome speech and conclude the opening ceremony.
Conference chair speakers, distinguished guests, lecturers and delegate participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Faculty of Environment and Resource Studies, Mahidol University, it gives me great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all of the distinguished participants attending the first Environment and Natural Resource International Conference on Global Climate Change and Sustainability Pathways. It is no doubt that there's one issue extremely influencing to the profile of this century more dramatically than any other, and that is the urgent and growing threats of a changing climate. Our understanding of climate change has advanced both in the digest science that says these distant threats have moved greatly into the present and into the direction of more frequent extreme weather events that show us exactly what this change may mean for future generations. Since a rapid environmental change is all around us, the most obvious example is climate change, which will be one of our top priority of mankind environmental problems. This is not the only threat. Many other clouds on the horizon, water shortage, land degradation, and the loss of biodiversity are existing. The current pressing issue affected by climate change, which are impacting to the fertility of natural resources and a wide range of ecosystems. It is already observable in many parts of the world. In fact, it is generally acknowledged that in the world today, there are many crucial problems resulting from such factors as environmental destruction, national resource depletion, climate change, global warming, natural disasters, natural resource scarcity and degradation. In addition, it is very likely that anthropogenic climate change will further limit options for human activity, in particular in developing countries. The consequence of accelerated change in the environmental are the challenge that we as global inhabitants face in the past decades. Development of strategies in natural resource management, together with advance in understanding ecosystem function, using multidisciplinary approaches, are key to tackling this challenge and highlighting the importance of sharing knowledge and experience in the Southeast Asian region and beyond. In recent years, the scope, intensity, and complexity of risks and disaster have grown. The first half of the year 2014 already hit us with a number of tragic floods, earthquakes, forest fires, and many other smaller and larger crises and disasters of technological, social, and political origin, which remind us again and again of how vulnerable our communities are, how limited we are in our ability to provide help, and how difficult it is to overcome such situations. Governments all around the world have therefore increase their focus on the means of solving environmental problems and the way of preventing natural disasters. Preparing for and handling emergencies is an immense task, not only for national governments but the world communities. With technological and financial support from developed countries, the region can find the cost-effective ways to address climate change, such as mitigation greenhouse gas emissions without harming economic growth. Countries in the region need to focus their action in terms of cleaner technologies, industries, and jobs, rather than focusing on the quantity of growth. Countries need to incorporate quality dimensions to reflect integrated development and the adverse consequence of climate change. This is a new paradigm shift that can support the proactive participation of developing countries in taking action, with adequate support from developed countries. Mahidol University, as a leading academic institution in environmental science and natural resource management studies in Southeast Asia for almost 4 decades, is therefore hosting NRIC 2014 to discuss pertinent issues with a regional focus and to stimulate future collaboration in order to more effectively adapt to our changing world. Climate change has no boundaries. No nation can deal with this one on its own. This is a problem that needs to be addressed by all nations, working together by sharing resources and technologies. This is a shared problem in need of a global solution and above all a multinational solution. Climate change is not just an environmental issue, it is a development issue which has enormous economic and social consequences. We need to understand the magnitude of the economic, social, and ecological challenge that confront us. Action to tackle climate change will not be easy and will require tough choices. And today, we are here right now because no nation can meet this global threat alone. Particularly, Asian countries have also engaged more allies and partners to prepare for the impact we cannot avoid. Finally, I shall once more than welcome you all. I believe that the outcomes of the meeting here will have significant impacts on the process towards a new climate change regime after 2014. I am grateful to all of you for coming. So please enjoy your participation in NRIC 2014. We hope you return to the next time in even more colleagues for the second NRIC conference. Thank you and having wonderful days in Bangkok, Thailand.
Now, we would like to invite all of our special guests, the keynote speaker, Dr. Stefanos, the Dean, the Vice Deans of the Faculty of Environment and Resource Studies, and all the chairs and co-chairs of all the sessions come up front for a photo. Thank you. Now, I would like to welcome back Associate Professor Dr. Kitikanta Montesit to give you a welcome speech and also give a brief talk about the journal.
Thank you very much. I will bother you just 5 minutes to introduce our journal, Environment and Natural Resource Journal, that I think it would be very interesting for all of you to submit your manuscript, academic manuscript, to our journal. Actually, the first international conference that held today, actually the idea is we would like to relate our international conference to our journal. I will give you a little bit for the information of our journal today. The aim of our journals, you can see the many topics that we allow you to submit. This is all the topics area that our journal allow you to submit to our journal. And right now we cited by the Thailand Citation Index. We have our impact factor is around 0.59. This is called for just in all the Thailand cited, not international cited. Actually, we are not going to the Scopus or ISI yet, but in near future, I think our journal, if we have more investment, I can say investment, so we can go through the Scopus or further ISI. As I say that right now our journal cited by the Thailand Citation Index. This is the citation center for Thailand, and we are in the first group. I mean the high quality standard for Thai journals. There are 3 groups that divided for Thailand journals. We are the first group of the Thailand journal standard. Also, right now, for increase the visibility, the Google Scholar can find our journal. That means guarantee that all of your manuscript that published with our journal, you can search by Google and you can directly download from the Google Scholar. This is increase our visibility to the international standard also. You can see we are low cost journal. It's the same as low cost airline. We pay a little bit of investment, but our journal is really high quality. I can say that I can guarantee that in Thailand we are in the first group. We use very less money, but we trying to keeping our high quality standard journal and also increase visibility, because we know that all the researchers that would like to publish, you need your article to be to have high visibility for international, not just in Thailand. You can see right now we can search by Google and you can download your article. That means all of the researchers in the world can search by using the keywords and see your article that published with our journal. Also, right now it's very congratulations that last week the ASEAN Citation Index, they recruit our journal into the database. It's just only 41 Thai journal that can go through this index. We are one of the 41 journals in Thailand that can be cited by ASEAN Citation Index. That means right now we can increase the visibility more and more without any payment. I can say the less money, but we need high quality and high visibility. So it means this citation index, this database is all of the 10 countries in ASEAN is joined together, and also that it's guaranteed that your manuscript that published with our journal can search, can see in this database. And also this database is very I can say very specific for ASEAN, because it's many languages. You can, if you are from Vietnam, it's Vietnam languages you can read Vietnam languages from this database. And also the article that published in Thai also you can read in Thai languages. So this index would be very helpful for our ASEAN country. So I just say that our schedule is twice time per year in June and December. And right now we have sufficient online. Don't submit your article via email anymore. You can use the submitted online. And also don't forget, you can submit via this website, ennrjournal.com. Thank you very much. Just introduce that our journal is right now is high quality in Thailand, and ask you to submit the article. And don't forget that we will select some of the article present in this international conference to publish in our journal in the special issue, and guarantee that all the proceeding, all the proceeding article, we will online in our website. But it's not in the journal. We will select to the journal. But all of your article in the proceeding, we will upload to our website. You can search your article in this conference via our website. Thank you very much.
Allow me to introduce again our first guest speaker, Dr. Stefanos Fotiou, who is the Senior Program Manager of the United Nations Environmental Program. He is an expert in sustainable development, green economy, and environmental education. And he will be presenting on Asia 2040, scenarios, challenges, and opportunities for sustainability. Please welcome Dr. Stefanos.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and I would like to thank very much the Mahidol University for inviting me for this opening speech. I feel very nice when I'm among colleagues from the academic community. I started my career in the academic community. I was working in the university for about 5 years before I started a career that ended up in the United Nations Environment Program. And I'm very glad when I talk to audience that they have students, and I can see a lot of students in the audience, and that's very, very nice. I feel very good because, 2 days ago I was talking to a primary school in Bhutan about sustainable development, and now I'm talking to high-level experts on sustainable development. I have to tell you, it was extremely difficult to talk about sustainable development in a primary school in Bhutan. So what I would like to do today is get you through some of research we have done in the United Nations Environment Program about the status of natural resources in the Asia and the Pacific region. This is research that has been commissioned by the United Nations Environment Program, and we have done in cooperation with the CSIRO, which is the Commonwealth Scientific Industrial Research Organization, with partners the Institutes of Global Environmental Strategies, the Energy and Resource Institute of India, the Chinese Academy of Science, and the University of Western Sydney. So what you will see in the rest of my presentation when it comes to data and scenarios is work that has been done by these scientific institutions. And of course it's a work published by UNEP, but as you know, this is not something that, and especially because we talk about scenarios, this is not something that could be perceived as an official position of the United Nations, but it's a scientific work we have done. So I would like to start by looking at the consumption of some basic resources. So, and what we have here, we start with energy. This is the, I think I can take this off. Thank you so much. So this is the consumption of energy in Asia Pacific, which is represented with the blue squares, world as a total with the black diamonds, and rest of the world with the triangles. And what you could see there is that the consumption of energy in Asia and the Pacific after the beginning of the 90s, it's increasing much more what was happening before. More interesting figure is if we see what are the sources of energy in Asia, and what you will see, it's a huge transformation from a society that it was based on a kind of balanced mixture between coal, hydro, non-hydro renewables and petroleum, to a society that it's almost more than 50% based on coal. And you do know better than me that coal is the dirtiest form of energy that we can have today. So there's not only a huge increase in the amount of energy, but a huge increase on the contribution of coal to this energy. And let us see not only the total consumption, but the energy consumption per capita in Asia and in the rest of the world. Again, you will see Asia is always represented here with the blue square, how the per capita energy use is increasing. And of course, we used to say that the energy use per capita is an indicator of prosperity, but at the same time, it's an indicator of greenhouse gases emissions and bigger environmental impact. The last graph on energy, and for me the most important, is what we could call the energy intensity of the economy. How many dollars we need to produce 1 unit of energy, or how, and see what is happening in Asia and the Pacific here after the 90s. So you will see that we will need it, if we go back to the 70s, the energy that it was needed to produce $1 of GDP was decreasing. And this is an indicator of increased energy efficiency. We need less energy to produce GDP. And look what's happening in Asia. After the 90s, middle of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, while the rest of the world is continuing to be more energy efficient, so the rest of the world uses less energy to produce the same amount of GDP, Asia starts about a decade or 12 years that it's almost stagnant, and then end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, it's increasing. So Asia needs more energy to produce the same amount of GDP, $1 of GDP. This is for me the most alarming fact, because it does show that there is a big problem with wrong technological investments, or probably non-investments in environmental technology or in cleaner production. So one of the first things to take out of the discussion on energy is that Asia has become less energy efficient and needs more energy to produce $1 of GDP the last years. If I show you, if I could show you, but I didn't want to go through the country discussion, there are huge differences among countries. There are countries in Asia that become more energy efficient and countries in Asia that become less energy efficient. So there's a huge variability between countries, but this is the picture for all Asia. So let's go now to another figure, which is the resource use. When we talk about resources here, we do have a mixture of biomass, minerals, construction materials. So it's an aggregation of something that is very tangible, and it's materials we use in our economy. And one of the most important facts here is that you will see that around the year 2005, what is happening is that Asia starts to consume more than the rest of the world as a region. So the amount of materials consumed in this part of the world, it's more now than the amount of material that they are consumed in the rest of the world. And of course, you will tell me that Asia is the manufacturing hub of the world, and we do know that a significant share of the region's resources is related with export. And because we knew that this is going to come as a question, we measured what was the trade balance of each country and of Asia as a total. And the conclusion we came with is that yes, there are a lot of exports from Asia, but the majority of resources are used for end consumption in the region. So even in countries that 20% of the output will go to exports, at the end, if we see the regional picture, most of the resources are consumed in the region. And I think we end up with less than 10% of resources that they are consumed in the region to produce goods and services that they are used outside the region. What is Asia consuming? You remember the sources of energy, yeah? In the sources of energy, we saw that Asia needs more and more coal to produce its energy. Now, what is consuming as materials? Again, you will see a huge transformation here. And I think this graph represents better than everything the transformation of Asian societies and economies the last 40 to 45 years. If you see in the 70s, more than 50% of Asia's consumption was biomass. And this is indicative of agricultural societies. This is indicative of societies and economies that they are based on agriculture as their main product. And back to the 70s, there were many countries in Asia that the main activity was subsistence agriculture. But look at the end of 2005. We do have more than 60% of the consumption of material to be what we say construction minerals. Do I need to justify this more in a city like Bangkok? I don't think so. I'm living the last 6 years in Bangkok, and I'm living at the same apartment. I started to live there back in March 2009. The skyline that I've seen these 6 years, and I very much regret the fact that I was not taking a picture every single month, has completely changed. I've seen in front of my apartment 10 new high-rise buildings the last 5 years. And that's only a small part of Bangkok. And the same thing is happening, of course, in Jakarta, in Manila, in hundreds of mega cities in China, and all over Asia. Excuse me. So we had a doubling of the biomass consumption over this time period of 45 years, and a sixfold increase in the use of non-renewable resources. Start to combine some figures in your mind now. 45 years, a huge increase in the consumption of energy, in the consumption of coal, in a decrease in the energy efficiency of the economy, a sixfold increase in the consumption of non-renewable resources, and you start creating a picture on where Asia is heading when it comes to the resource flows. Let's go to the per capita resource use. They used to say that Asia was the poor region of the world. And maybe that was the case before, until the mid of the 80s. You see that Asia was consuming just 1/3 of the rest of the world as per capita. But today Asia is consuming as the rest of the world. I mean, this difference here is statistically probably insignificant, and if I had, and we have now data, and we will be able in November, in 19th of November, to present the new data that go up to 2010, you would see that Asia is exactly as the rest of the world when it comes to the consumption of materials per capita. So there's no excuse today that Asia needs to consume more per capita because it has already caught up with the rest of the world. So we're not talking anymore about the poor region of the world. We do talk about a region that has a lot of poor people and still a lot of poverty, but probably this is a subject of another discussion that signifies the fact that Asia has developed a lot, it has increased the GDP a lot, and at the same time it didn't manage to decrease inequality. So we had a case where there was a huge economic growth, there was a huge increase of the total output of Asia, there was a huge increase on the consumption of resources, as you see here, but still we have a lot of poor people because this development was not distributed, this growth was not distributed equally. And at the end, inequality was increased in Asia as in the rest of the world as well. But this, as I told you, is probably the subject of another presentation. Last figure, and again, most alarming figure, the resource used per dollar. How much resources we need to produce $1 of GDP. And here are even worse news than the ones in energy. You would see that the world was in a kind of decreasing path, and it's still the rest of the world is in a decreasing path when it comes to how many tons of material we need in order to produce 1 unit of GDP. And this is in US international dollars. After the 90s, you see the increase in Asia. It's really frightening. I mean, if you could draw a line here, if you could make a regression, I think that you could come up with a very robust model showing you some coefficients of around 80% of a linear increase of the inefficiency of the production systems in Asia. Because this is exactly what this graph is about. It's about the inefficiency of the production systems. So each dollar of GDP requires increasing amount of resources. And as you would see, after this shift here in the beginning of the 2000s, this shift started to impact the entire world. Until the end of the 90s, the world was still going down and it was increasing the resource use per dollar of GDP. After this, even the global resource use per dollar of GDP is increasing. Why is increasing? Because of the increase in Asia. The rest of the world is still going better, but Asia is increasing. The implications are many. I'm not going to focus on these slides because you know the implications better than me. And both Professor Campanat and Professor Kittikon, they talked in their opening remarks about the increase of greenhouse gases emissions and the increase of environmental degradation. But just look again some figures, and all this is for Asia. 1990, 10 billion tons of greenhouse gases emissions. In 2005, in 15 years, 60% increase from 10 to 16. It's these figures, are really big and frightening. And I do know that we can see the impacts. But you are scientists, and bearing in mind the linear increases that we saw in the previous slides, you would understand where we're heading. And where we're heading, I'll try to show it in the next 2-3 minutes. As I told you, still in Asia there's a lot of poverty. There are hundreds of millions of people, but they do live in poverty. And actually for these people, we need to increase the material well-being of their life. So these people need to consume more because they do missing consumption for basic needs. They do missing consumption for a healthy and nutritious food. They do miss a lot of consumption for a proper shelter. So on the one side, we need to increase the material standard of many people living in Asia, and on the other side, to make sure that we do keep the integrity of resources and the environment. As I have shown in the previous slides, the sustainability of Asia will define global sustainability. If Asia could achieve better, I would not say that we can really say in our lifespan absolute sustainable development. But if Asia will achieve a good path of sustainable development, the entire world will achieve a good path of sustainable development. If Asia will not achieve it, then the entire world will not achieve this. So that's the dual objective we have here. Now, another part of our research was to develop some scenarios. And in the scenarios, there was a very big discussion we had with researchers. We even have an entire 2 days meeting in Bangkok and then another 2 days meeting in Australia just to select the models that we will build up the scenarios. Before I try to explain this, can I see some hands? How many in this room they do have education as economists? Economists, 1, 2. Okay. So it's good because I haven't assumed that people know economics here, so I will explain things in the easy way. But something maybe just for the 2 economists we have in the room. Globally, there's something, it's one of the biggest economic models and the biggest economic assumptions that all institutions are using for forecasts and scenarios. It's a model that it's called the general equilibrium model. And actually the so-called the computational general equilibrium model. What I want to say is that these scenarios and these studies are not based on a general equilibrium model because the researchers and myself behind the study, we believe that the general equilibrium model is not an adequate model to represent scenarios for sustainable development. So what we have done is that we've bring together 2 different models. The one is what we call a physical flow model that represents flows of resources, energy, material, labor, all resources that we need for our production and consumption system. The other is a monetary flow system that represents the flows of financial resources between firms, banks, and workers. Because, and you know, this is something, this part is what the general equilibrium model ignores completely. Because and this is for the non-economists, the economists that they created the general equilibrium model, they created a model that takes account a lot of variables, but it doesn't take into account money. So the general equilibrium model believes that money is of non-importance to the global economy. Now tell me if this is a realistic assumption. So we have 2 models, one representing the flow of natural resources, the other representing the flow of money in the economy. And we do combine these 2, the biophysical model and the financial model together. And we had 3 different scenarios that we looked at. The first is what we could call the business as usual scenario. In the business, and these are the assumptions of the business as usual scenario. We had assumptions about the labor productivity, energy intensity, material intensity, consumption, production, and type of technology that we will use. What you would probably need to keep from this business as usual scenario is that although we call it business as usual, we do make the assumption that we will have 25% increase in the energy and material efficiency. So even the business as usual scenario assumes that our energy and material efficiency is becoming better for the next 40 years. Okay? So it's not a scenario that says we will achieve nothing. We will achieve 25% increase in energy and material intensity. The second scenario was the resource efficient scenario. What we have done here is that we have just doubled the increase of the efficiency. So the rates of energy and material efficiency are improved not by 25% but by 50%. And this is a huge, huge thing. More or less the rest, the consumption, production and types of technology are stayed as in the business as usual scenario. In the third scenario, which is what we call system innovation, you will not see the first parts because are exactly the same. What we change there is the consumption and the technology. So we do assume, as previously, the 50% increase in efficiency of energy and materials, and on top of this, we do make some additional assumptions. First of all, that we have Can we start again? Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button. So first of all, that we have a 50% decrease in the intensity of consumption. I give you 5 seconds to think about it. Can I clear my thought? It doesn't mean that the consumption will go down. It means that the intensity by which we consume, and intensity by which we consume means the amount of money that they go to final consumption as percentage of our income or of our investments will decrease by 50%. So we will save more and we will consume less proportionally. And the second bigger assumption is about the type of technology, especially when it comes to transport. And why? Because transport today is responsible for more than 25% of greenhouse gases emissions. And you will see that the main assumption is that rail becomes the predominant mode of transport, both for passengers but also for goods, for freight. And the third assumption is that in 2050, only 50% of energy will be based on fossil fuels, 5% on nuclear, and then we'll have 30% hydro, 30 biomass, and 20 solar wind. So we will more or less have 50% 3 into 50% non-greenhouse gases energy sources. You will probably tell me that this is a bit unrealistic, and I would agree with you. This is not what we could call the realistic scenario. Unfortunately, it's the only scenario that we came out and it was giving some hope for the future. And we don't want to use this scenario to focus on the specific numbers, but we use this scenario in order to propose what we call the system innovation approach, which is going to be my last slide later. So this is what's happening if we take the scenarios, first of all, for the so-called material intensity. You have here the purple, the business as usual scenario, and the yellow, the high efficiency scenario. This represents total of Asia. We do not have the system innovation scenario for the entire Asia because it was impossible to aggregate the country level data. And we thought that it really doesn't make sense for the system innovation scenario that has so many assumptions on technology to do a model that really represents the entire region. So when it comes to the region and to the material intensity, what we can say is that with the high efficiency scenario, we could win some time. And things could be going better, but still the material intensity will increase. I have here two examples of two countries where we managed, because we studied a total of 22 countries in Asia, and you will see what are the completely different results at the country level. So here is China and here is Australia. The business as usual scenario, the high efficiency, for which, look, the very interesting thing. The high efficiency scenario, it's really working very well, could work very well actually, for 15 years in China. And it could really decrease the material intensity of the economy. But what's happening after this, look, it goes again in parallel with the business as usual scenario. This is happening because of the so-called rebound effect and the so-called Jevons paradox. The Jevons paradox says us that once we achieve high rates of efficiency in a resource, we tend to consume more of this resource. So, you know, a very classic example of this so-called Jevons paradox is our cars. 40 years ago, the average consumption of a passenger car was about 15 or 20 liters of gasoline per 100 kilometers. Today, the average consumption has gone below 10 liters per 100 kilometers. But what happened with the overall consumption of gasoline? It went up, of course, because the achievement, the technological achievement, it boosted actually the overall consumption. And this is what's happening many times with the high efficiency scenario. You achieve efficiency, but at the end your resources will really increase. The system innovation scenario could work very well in China. Look at Australia now, yeah? Two different cases. Australia, it's a country that maybe for 10 years, the high efficiency scenario will not give probably what we were expecting from better technology. Why? Because there's already good established technology and infrastructure there. So a country like Australia will need to reach another level of efficiency. But once it reaches this level, look how the material intensity of the economy is getting better and better and better and better. So in a country like Australia, it means in a not industrialized country, really the high efficiency scenario, which is technologically very achievable, could improve dramatically the material intensity of the economy. And this is about the energy consumption. Again, you might see there are two scenarios here. This is the business as usual. This is the high efficiency. Again, you see this rebound effect. It's improving until a level, but then it's increasing. And this is something that simulates more or less the system innovation scenario. It's not a system innovation scenario. It's a scenario of high efficiency that allows a huge unemployment. And I have one parenthesis here. In the high efficiency scenario, something that it was happening, it was that because of the improvement of the technology, unemployment was created. You needed less people per unit of GDP. But we were not allowing this to happen because we were assuming that what we'll have is a transformation of jobs and people taken out of some specific sectors and going to other sectors. So it was a kind of external change in the scenario, because we could not allow unemployment levels of 20, 30, 40, or 50%. If we do not care about unemployment, which is extremely politically incorrect to say, but I'm just for the theory, if we do allow unemployment to reach very high levels, this could be the situation. So we could have a very big improvement in the energy consumption. But this would be caused actually because people would be unemployed, so they would not have income, so they would not have the capacity to consume. And this is why we have put this as just a theoretical case, but it's not represent something that we do wish to happen. And this will be, this might happen, again, I have China and Australia, when it comes to energy and when it comes specifically to oil consumption. You see, the business as usual scenario, the high efficiency of the system. The overall message from these scenarios: increased resource efficiency is a necessary but not sufficient condition to achieve sustainable development in Asia. That's the main message here. We do need resource efficiency. We do need to increase the efficiency by which we use natural resources. But this will not be enough to change the path of sustainable development in Asia. We will need, of course, strategies, practices, investments, but we will need something more. And here is what we think would be parts of an integrated reply. The first is a focus on the life cycle approach. And a focus on the life cycle approach could really change the way we take decisions. Think how a government will take decisions when it comes to what it will procure. A government will decide which car will procure on the basis of the purchasing price. Yes? If we bring in this cost, the cost of resources that they were associated with the specific goods and services, the cost of maintenance, and the environmental cost of the use of a product, the decision will be completely different. And that's only one example of how the life cycle approach will influence our decisions. We need life cycle costing, we need life cycle assessment to drive our decisions. And this is what something we do in the United Nations Environment Program is we have a very big focus on what we call sustainable consumption and production that starts from the sustainable resource management and goes back to the waste management. Second thing, we need a variety of policy tools, a mixture of policy tools, including, of course, some economic instruments on top of the voluntary and information instruments. Before I go to the condition 3, I wanted to talk about individual choices because the last slides I will show, it will really depend on choices we do as individuals. And one important question here is how we choose, how we make choices as individual consumers. And there are two schools of thought on how we choose, two scientific schools of thought. The one is what we call classical consumption theory. Actually, it's based on neoclassical economics. So it says to us that we are rational people, that we seek to maximize our utility. So it says to us, when you go to a supermarket, when you go to a shopping mall, you think that you have a specific amount of money in your pocket, and you say, okay, I have 3,000 baht here. And you have the ability to spend all these 3,000 baht. So the neoclassical consumption theory says that you will start to calculating what is the portfolio, what is the basket of goods that you can buy to maximize your utility. And this is quite, actually, I'm sorry, I'll use a word that's not very political correct. It's an insane theory. Scientists have found that if we are operating this way, every time that we go to supermarkets, we would need to think for about 20 months before we take a decision. even if we had a calculator to make all the calculations, or okay, am I going to buy this brand of rice or the other brand of rice? Am I going to buy this water or the other? Even if we had a calculator and we are making all these calculations, we will need more than 1 year every time we go to the supermarket. So clearly, we are not rational people, that we are not machines, because this theory tells us that we are computational machines, that every time that we buy something, we do these calculations. There's another very interesting theory which says, look, we are irrational creatures. What we want to do is to look for social status after consumption. So they say to us that you will buy this phone or the other phone because you believe that the moment you bring this phone outside, you scream about your social status. And this is obvious on the way that a lot of goods and products are advertised today. Let's think, what's the best way to advertise a mobile phone? The best way to advertise a mobile phone is put it in the hands of Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie. Yes, because then everybody will go crazy, will say, yes, I want this phone because it makes me feel closer to them. So this alternative theory of consumption tells us that we as people tend to mimic what we perceive as more respected actors of our society. And it also says that consumption is a symbolic act. It says, I consume, therefore I am. So I will buy this cloth or this product and I will express identity. So we have an opportunity to make sustainability as a mainstream identity of consumers' choices, and we need to do this by altering consumer behavior on the basis of the marketing of sustainable products and social marketing, and of course of education. So the third condition, and I'm finishing here, we need what we call systems innovation approach that could focus in 4 areas. The first is the one I talked to you about. It's the changes in the consumption and the lifestyles. The second is huge technological improvements, but technological improvements that they will permit us to increase our energy, our material efficiency without compromising what we call nutritional budgets. So we don't want a technological improvement that it will make the food more expensive for the poor. We don't need a technological improvement that it will take off traditional forms of agriculture. Yes, we need something to increase our energy efficiency. We need investments in infrastructure, on sustainable infrastructure, and of course on skills, on institutions. And on top, we need to strengthen our fiscal and financial instruments. And here is a case that we need to make there need to be a lot of political discussion on specific taxes, fees, and an entire restructuring of the financial system. So with these thoughts, I would like one more time to thank you very much and also wish you a very good continuation in the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stefanos. I believe we have time for some questions. I'm sure there are many questions and comments.
It was such an interesting topic, right? That link. Somebody raise your hand?
Well, since I have the microphone, you were talking about what can we do as an individual consumers to approach to this, the best scenario, let's say, in 40 years, in 50 years. However, I'm not so sure that as an individual I can do much. Shouldn't be the governments, corporations, guided by people like you who put the rules.
Yes. I absolutely agree with you that the biggest responsibility is first with the corporations, because they do own the financial capital. Second, with the governments, to do two things: to reward good behaviors, and why not to enforce the ones that they do not follow the law to follow the law and punish bad behaviors. And third is the individual choices. I do believe that our individual choices are not so strong because today the marketing that's coming from the big corporations could really alter our choices. So yes, I do agree. We all have responsibility, but in terms of level, it starts with the private sector to the government to the individual choices.
Especially because they are
the financial power. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay, yes. Thank you for a very good presentation today from you. And then just funny question from me is just because I'm far from the natural resource, some kind of the oil or energy, but from the social environment and concerned with the people. Just want to know what the word of yellow paradox come from. Why you use it the yellow color? Why don't you use the other color? Yellow paradox. Do you know that? What does the meaning come from? Okay. And then another, I would like to share.
I didn't say yellow paradox. It's Jevons paradox. So Jevons is a name.
Oh, okay.
It's a name of a scientist that found it. So I'm sorry about my pronunciation.
Okay,
yeah. It was not yellow, it's Jevons.
Okay, we'll develop this theory or this concept, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So there's no signaling behind the colors in the presentation. Also, I know that in Thailand you are quite sensitive with different colors. I've tried to be very neutral today, but all the graphs have been created by our scientists, and they just choose colors that they write good to the screen. Yes.
Okay, then I agree with you that for the policy is so important. So on the governors should know about this concept for the natural resource efficiency using or something like that. And then for the people to have a good transportation, public transportation, then use their own cars, that increasing every day, and then cost of public. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes. I'm the student from Eastern Asia University.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I think that especially when it comes to transport, the private cars is a very big political discussion. When I first came to Bangkok 6 years ago, I said, how on earth I'm going to survive with these traffic jams? My reaction was that I completely changed my daily life. I used to go to the office at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now I go to the office 7 o'clock in the morning because I want to avoid the traffic jam. After Bangkok, I visited Jakarta and Manila, and I saw that Bangkok is nothing in front of Jakarta and Manila. But I have to tell you, the last 2 years, the increase in the amount of cars in Bangkok, it's staggering. I know you changed the registration, the system of the registration numbers, so you could see so many new cars. I don't know where it will go, but frankly, I think the answer is on public transport. When I was living in Europe, I didn't use a private car because I could go everywhere with public transport for my job, and even if I wanted to move inside the country, I was taking the train. If 2 or 3 times per year I wanted a car in order to make a road trip, I was renting one. So I think that the government would start demanding from people to stop using individual cars or make the use of individual cars extremely expensive if it first provides them a good public transport. And I believe the moment the government, and this is also your reaction to your first question, where is the individual responsibility and where is the government? If the government could provide a good public transport, then increase the price for the use of private cars by 100%, 200%, 300%, yes. Nobody could say that this is unfair. I provide public transport and I will make individual transport 5, 6 or 10 times more expensive. Do it. I think the government will do this. Nobody will say it's unfair.
Sean.
Dr. Stefanos, if I may address you that way.
You can call me Stefanos, all of you here. Yes.
Thank you, Stefan. John Lawrence from the faculty, the hosting faculty. Thank you so much. It was a quite impressive talk, even for a non-scientist like myself. I want to ask a question on behalf of my colleague, who is a scientist, regarding the impact or challenge, or both, that are facing scientists everywhere, I guess especially in this region, in that their research, the initiatives they're taking, don't seem to be having a significant impact on governmental policy and actual implementation, enforcement. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that. Maybe compare and contrast. I think there's some similar evidence of this in the United States that I follow, but I wonder if there's some unique challenges and solutions in this region and maybe Thailand specifically.
My first reaction is that you should not feel alone, because this is something happening worldwide. You could see one of the biggest scientific bodies worldwide is the so-called IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change. And you have there a body of top-level scientists agreeing by 99% that climate change is caused by humans. But do you see the same reaction from the policymakers on addressing this message? And it has become as clear as never. So I don't think you are either in Thailand or in Asia, you're alone. What I think is missing, and probably what I think it's something that the science community could do better, is, I don't know if I put it in the right English word, is to popularize and politicize your scientific results. We have initiated in UNEP something we call a science policy dialogue. Because I'll tell you what's happening when you start bringing policymakers and scientists together. The scientists try to prove, they are bleeding to prove that what they say is credible. You know, the policymakers accept the credibility of science as a concept. The policymakers say, yes, this is coming from science, I will accept it. But it is hard for them to see what are the policy implications of the scientific findings. And I think this is part also of responsibility of UNEP and other international organizations, is to take the findings and the recommendations of science and transform them to policy recommendations. If I come down to Asia, I don't want to talk about Thailand because frankly, I don't know exactly how is the science and policy interaction in Thailand. In Asia, and I'm talking Asia because we do organize regional events. We don't have any, we don't organize any national-based events. So in Asia, I do see that still politicians are not entirely or not really convinced by what science is presenting to them. I think both the scientific community and the policy world should make steps to come closer to each other. And, you know, I always think that the people that they are elected, for example, to be in a government, for them, they have to report back to the people that elected them. The scientists, they have to report also back to the people that they have trusted them with specific positions. So it's all about the kind of responsibility that we have against the people. And this is probably the element that could bring the scientists and the policymakers together. If they try to justify their actions and if they try to find some cooperation platform on the basis of the responsibility they have for the people.
Do we have any other questions? Okay.
First, thank you very much for the presentation. About the scenario in different research of the natural consumption. You say Asia will increasingly consume the material and any preferable or maybe popular scenario. You use the popular scenario, right? And based on 1990 to 2005. Sure, Asia will consume the natural resources and energy. If we count Asia, it's like 60% of the whole population of the world. And those material and energy we consume, we sending to Europe. And we count based on Asia. It means that Asia consumes? No. For example, in Thailand, we did a scenario, cement consumption. 60% is sending to Europe, and material is consumed as Thailand based. And China and India. And the next is not just the question, the next thing is the energy consumption. In Asia, mostly is material based industry, not high-end or technology based. So surely we consume the energy. And all those energy in our industrial sector like iron, cement, we cannot use nuclear power. We cannot use the electricity because all those materials need the heat from coal for the limitation of the production. And the ending point is per capita consumption. Consumption of per capita, like you say, consumption behavior. In terms of per capita, it's surely the scientific base. Even the ecological footprint, carbon footprint, in Asia, in average per capita, even per raw material or even per energy, we are much, much less than Europe. Like we have 1.2 hectare per person. In Europe, maybe like, for example, like carbon per capita, like in Thailand, in China, is much less than Europe. And the point is, if we do that scenario to predict in the people scenario, this is possible to imply, like you said, the dual strategy. If we cut out the consumption base, material base, energy base, that is sending out to you to be fair in Asia.
Thank you for you. I'll go many slides back because I knew this is a question to come. Okay. First of all, inside individual countries, there are huge differences on where the consumption of natural resources is going. I know Thailand, I know that 60% of the GDP of Thailand is exports. Yes? So you could easily say that 60% of my consumption, of my resource consumption is actually not for Thailand, but for the countries that I'm exporting. What percentage is your export in Europe of Thailand? What percentage of your export is going to Europe? How much? About 20%, yes? Yeah. Because the bulk of your exports, where is going? To Asia. Yeah? To the ASEAN, because ASEAN is is more than 1/3 of Thailand's exports. And then China, Japan, Australia, correct? Would you agree with this? Okay. You know, I'm not here to debate about the consumption of resources in Thailand. But what I can tell you, and what UNEP could really say that we do believe the credibility of science, is this thing. Most of the resources are used for end consumption in the region. So when we talk about Asia, even if we account, and we have accounted, for the export effect, most of the resource consumption is happening in the region. And you know, it's about coal that it will be burned in Thailand for products that they will be used in Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, China, Malaysia, Indonesia. So that's why I'm talking about the region. So as a region, the export impact is not one that can excuse non-action. That's my first comment. The second, and where I will agree 100% with you. There's a different level of responsibility among countries in the region. And the international community talks about something that is called common but differentiated responsibility. So yes, indeed, nobody expects that a country like Laos will have the same responsibility as Thailand, or Thailand will have the same responsibility as China or Australia or Japan. So it is about differentiated responsibility, but it's about common responsibility. We could go down, and I will welcome you to download the entire publication from the internet. It's called Resource Efficiency Economic Outlook, where you will see individual country behaviors. And in the individual country behaviors, of course, there are different policies for each different country. On your last comment about the total consumption and the per capita consumption, I think the most fair one, because the total and the per capita make two blocks that they want to fight between them. The most fair is the consumption per unit of GDP. And if you put the consumption per unit of GDP, you will see that we don't have two opposite blocks that they need to work. We have things that they come very close together. So it's not about, because if you are in this distance, you want to fight them. If you come closer and you see each other, you want to cooperate. So this is why the resource use or energy use per amount of GDP is something that can bring the countries together, because they can understand from each other.
Perhaps this is something we can continue over the break. And right now,
yeah, we have to stop it here. You can continue talking to Stefanos during the conference, during the break. Now, I want you, Stefanos, to accept a certificate as our keynote speaker from the Dean of the Faculty of Environment, Kampanan Patikul.